All right. Welcome to sculpting cloth and drapery in ZBrush. We have gone through the anatomy inside and out at this point. And for the rest of the semester, we are going to now be focusing on things like drapery, accessories, and finishing of sculpts. These are what people like to call the fun part of sculpting because, like the other part can be a little tedious getting the bare bones, the basic shapes and all that stuff in. But when you start creating accessories, weapons, hats, hair, like this is the fun stuff for a lot of people to do because it gets you to be a little more creative with it and different things like that. So let's get started. All right, so when discussing sculpting cloth and drapery in ZBrush, it's important to understand how fabric behaves for character sculpting in general, right? The reason is, because the way I've seen it put, and I thought this was pretty interesting, a little apropos, is drapery can be a little like dyslexia. Really hard to keep track of everything, right? Like because it's going in here, starting here, coming out there, it's folding, there's tension points, right? There's parts where it folds and overlaps and twists and turns, and it can really take on a life of its own, right? And then you're dealing with, depending on if it's heavy fabric or light fabric or, thin flowing fabric, right? If it's a woven fabric, even sheets of metal can even bend in certain ways. So like you can even like think about like chainmail, there's so many different aspects and pieces that you have to think about when you're sculpting fabric that once you need to kind of give yourself a general understanding of it. Right? There's usually 6, 7, sometimes 8 or 9 different types of folds that you'll deal with in the real world, right? And they all vary depending on wind, gravity, the forces, if it's pinned to something, sewing, stitching, things like that, all affect how drapery and folds work for us, all right? So for us, we are going to take it down to the basics, right? There is the diaper fold. Funny name, but it kind of looks like a diaper, usually having 2 tension points, and it's drooping down, right? And you can see why it's kind of called the diaper fold, right? Not to be mistaken with a drop fold, which is similar, but different in its own right. Right, you've also got the spiral fold, which kind of wraps around and spirals and it twists and turns around the figure or the shape that it's encompassing. You've got the zigzag fold, which kind of draws a Z whenever you're using it or whenever you're trying to depict it. There's also the pipe fold. You'll find these in like curtains and sometimes in jeans or different things like that. You've got the half lock fold, the insert fold, which is like folds that are falling on the floor, clothing or big pieces of drapery that is falling on the floor and how they kind of intertwine into each other, right? You just kind of, it's almost an art in itself, right? How gravity affects our clothing and shows us how it works, right? So I want to talk just the importance of cloth in character sculpting, because what it's going to do is it's going to enhance the realism of and the storytelling of our characters, right? Because depending on how the clothes look, are they brand new? Is it a brand new shiny suit, right, where there's no wrinkles, right? The only wrinkles you're going to get is when you get a half lock fold in the elbow or the knee or something like that, right? Or is it old, worn, tattered? Can you see the fibers in it, right? There's holes ripped in it, where the character looks like he's been through a lot, right? Cloth tells its own story, right? Is it a bandage that's been wrapped around and bloodied, with fibers and things sticking out of it, and it's torn and ripped to shreds and it's barely hanging on, right? Or is it a mummy wrap, which is brand new, pristine, and it kind of, does its own thing? Is it kind of like, think about Roman and Greek times and the kind of cloth they wear, right? Their clothing drapes down. They wore more draperies and not t-shirts or a loose blouse or something like that. So they tell different stories and help enhance our characters. It adds weight and movement to our characters. It differentiates materials in the sculpt, right? I was talking about, you can have chainmail, you can have burlap, you can have cotton, weave, silk. They all behave differently under gravity, tension, compression. Those type of things all affect how our cloth and drapery will react. All right. So your job is to kind of understand all of these things and then try to put them in your sculpt, right? So we're going to try to focus on the 6 types of folds. We have the pipe fold, which is hanging fabric, robes, curtains, right? I talked about that. We've got zigzag folds, which are compression folds like pants and loose sleeves. We've got spiral folds, which are wrapped fabric, bandages, sleeves, things like that. We've got drop folds as well, which are single point hanging cloth like a flag or so, or scarves. And we've also got half lock folds, which are fabric caught on an object like a belt or strap, something that's wrapped around you, right? And then we also have insert folds. I told you, like you threw like your bed sheet or your shirt or something, or a sweater on the floor, right? If you throw it on the ground, you see how it folds. You're gonna have a lot of insert folds because it's kind of just falling in on itself because of gravity. All right. So these are the kind of folds that you guys need to know. And now I'm gonna kind of try to go into it for you guys, so you guys can see, and then I'll let you guys go and practice some of these. All right. So we spend most of our time studying the nude figure. Often art employs the clothed figure. It is imperative to understand the structure under the clothes first, which is why we went through the anatomy. All right. Because it will directly affect how it reacts on the surface. Folds happen when fabric is subjected to a point tension, a force of compression, or in some cases, both. All right. So when you look over here, this is the point of tension, right? Imagine if you picked up a blanket or a duvet cover or a bed sheet or something. Wherever you pick it up is that point of tension, and then gravity affects it, pulling it down, shaping it, right? Sometimes you'll have forces of tension and compression. Forces of compression, right? So if you have curtains in your house, I just put up curtains in my office, right? You will have different parts of it that compress based on the forces that we have applied to it, right? And now in this situation right here, you have both compression and tension working against the fabric, all right? So you've got the force of the compression, right? Because it's bunched up on this curtain rod, and then you have a point of tension, right? Imagine pulling it from one side. You're pulling it from this side right here, all right? So lines of folds generally radiate out from a point of tension, all right? You can see that. There's a point of tension, and then the lines and the folds usually generate themselves out of that, all right? They generally lay perpendicular, depending on when you're talking about compression, to the direction of the force of compression. So you'll have kind of like an undulating kind of shape when it comes to curtains, right? It'll go in and out because of that compression, almost like an accordion, all right? So that's what happens when you have those forces acting upon that piece of cloth, all right? So we've talked about the most 6 common types of cloth. We've got the diaper folds, the pipe folds, the drop folds, the half lock folds, spiral folds, and then the zigzag folds. And to see some of the best depictions and creations of this, look no further than a lot of Renaissance artists, the Da Vinci's, Michelangelo. Those guys were masters of understanding, looking at, and depicting drapery. And man, those they're masters for a reason. They do it beautifully. And whenever you look at you look at their works, their drawings, you just wonder, man, these guys, what are we missing in our time that allowed them to be so far ahead? Because like you would think, like, based on the pace that they were going at, right? The way they were inventing things, the way they were, we'd be on the moon right now, but I think they unlocked a lot of it for us, and then we are here to kind of learn from what they've done, So pipe folds are found in situations such as dresses and curtains. A series of semi-tubular shapes form as the material hangs free at the opposite end. The folds themselves are usually cylindrical in nature, and sometimes you'll get this undulating kind of like up and down, up, down kind of shape when it comes to pipe folds, right? Because that's where they get their name, the pipe fold, right? So sometimes you'll see that the points of tension when it comes to pipe folds are on a long bar like this, or you can get them when you're compressing the clothing with a belt. Maybe it's a priest wearing like a robe, and he has to use like a rope to tie the robe, and you'll get those long pipe folds that are commonly seen in house curtains and different types of dresses and skirts and things like that, right? So the pipe fold patterns or pipe folds are roughly vertical lines perpendicular to the force of the compression. The folds turn into cylindrical shapes at the bottom. How round or squished and how many folds depend on the amount of compression. The more compression, the more folds, and the more squished each one gets. All right, that should make sense to you guys. The more I compress it, the tighter those folds are going to be, the more folds that you're going to get. All right, and as always, be mindful of the forms and cross contours that are present in the folds. The form is like a flattened or squished cylinder. It's easy to see the cylindrical form coming towards us, but don't forget, as the form turns away, they create an inner cylinder as well. So that's what I'm talking about, the undulating. It's like it goes up and down, up, peak, valley, and it's not peak in the sense of like you're getting a point, but it's kind of rolling, these rolling kind of waves that you're getting. All right. Next, we've got zigzag fold. The zigzag fold occurs when pants bunch up at the bottom of the leg or bottom or behind the knee due to the compression of the material. These folds also refer to folds that alternate on one another in a zigzagged way. All right, you guys can see the zigzaggy kind of pattern that you're going to get on these zigzag folds. All right, you'll get them on pants. You'll get them on if you fold your shirt. If you've got a long sleeve on, like I do, you fold your arm or something like that. You can start to get these zigzaggy kind of patterns there. All right, and what you're gonna realize is you're gonna get sometimes multiple types of folds in one piece of cloth, or depending on the tension point, depending on if you're wearing a book bag on, or you've got a purse around your sleeve, slung imagine it's a fantasy character and he has a sword slung around his back and the strap comes around his chest, right? He might have a compression that comes around his chest. Now he's gonna have shapes and things like that. Let me show you because you guys can't see me. So like if I have like something slung around my chest, right? I'm gonna have compression right through here, right? That'll then start to pull. Right now, the cloth will start to pull in these kind of directions because I've now introduced a new force, compression, right? To my shirt, to my sweater, whatever I'm wearing. And depending on the size, the weight of the cloth, gravity will change all of these, right? The thing about this is it sounds complicated, but it's complicated to a certain point. And then it gets to, okay, you see it and then you do it. And then you're like, oh, it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be, right? So they're also found in sleeves, right? I have some right here. I've got zigzags going on right up and down my sleeve right now. This is the perfect shirt to wear for this because you guys can literally see I've got this zigzaggy pattern in the sleeve, right? Just because I'm compressing my arm, right? So they're created when a cylinder of fabric is under very gentle compression or was under heavy compression, like in spiral folds, and then relaxed. It is essentially a softer, flatter version of the spiral fold. Zigzag folds create a series of zigzagging lines moving down the fabric. You want to notice this diamond shapes that are created with the zigzag folds, right? So when you're sculpting it, keep that in mind. And as usual, I'm going to give you guys the PowerPoint as well so you guys can have it as reference, right? You guys will build this as your like mini library of references that you guys can use whenever you're sculpting something. All right, so you're getting this gentle compression right here because it's relaxed, right? He probably had his knee bent for a while and now he's standing straight, or they had the arm bent. I don't know if this is an arm or leg, but they've got it bent for a while and then they relaxed it, and that's when you get those shapes. So cross contours show us that the zigzag folds are sort of like a mouth opening, right? They almost look like a mouth opening. Or an eye for me. It looks like kind of like an eye. So zigzag folds are often on long sleeves or pant legs, front or back. Notice they can be thin, shallow forms or quite thick. And that depends on the material, like I was saying. Like this person's wearing jeans. So you can see that they're kind of thicker, heavier kind of folds that you're getting in the folds of this knee kind of area. All right. Whoa, calm down, take it easy. Now spiral folds, all right, these occur in sleeves that have been bunched up. They also occur in material that is being wrapped around and bunched up on a tubular form such as an arm or a leg, right? And that's why I said you're going to get multiple of these sometimes in one sculpt. So you might have zigzag on the back, and then the rest of the folds around are kind of like a spiral fold. So you're mixing and matching some of these depending on the situation that you're in, right? So they're created when a cylinder of fabric is compressed by being pushed on into itself. Spiral folds look like a series of crisscross lines that spiral around the cylindrical form they sit on. Pushed up sleeves or pant legs, leg warmers, or loose socks are all common instances of spiral folds. Below we see spiral folds on the sleeves, chest, and the upper portion of the pants, right? So we've got spiral folds here, right? You can see because she's compressed her sleeve, she's got these folds that, and because it goes here, you can imagine that it's going all the way around, right? Kind of seeing through the form, you can see where you're getting some of these spirals, and then you're also getting a little zigzag action as well, right? Because you can see those mouth openings as well. So you're getting a little bit of both. So if we look at what a cross contour reveals, we see that each of the folds is like a small cylinder wrapping around the form. So looking, if I just start to compress, right, start to compress my sleeve here, I will start to generate and create these spiral folds, right? I'll start to generate these spiral folds in my clothing as well, all right? So here's some more examples of what it looks like from the top, right? This is like a wristband. Curtains can have spiral folds because when you squeeze them and compress them together, you're going to get that spiral action. All right, so now let's talk about the half-locked fold, half-lock fold. You will see these in the upper part of the pants where the body is bending forward. You will also see this fold on the sides of the knees when a person is squatting or seated, causing a change in the direction of the material to pop out on the sides. All right. So what they're talking about, this half lock, you can see this compression right here, right? So the point of tension is right here, right? I'm going to bend this elbow, but when I bend this elbow, I'm compressing the inside, the opposite of it, right? The opposite reaction, right? The opposite side of the compression will be a point of tension. Half-lock folds are most commonly seen when a long sleeve is compressed by a bent elbow. The half-lock gets its name because the top section and the bottom section lock, right? So the top section right there, the bottom section, and there's a crease, and they come together in this manner, right? A crease or a valley in the center of the area of compression. All right. So the lines of tension will radiate from the point of the tension. You can see that we've got this broad line right here, right? There's no real, if you think about it like an EKG, which is those little heartbeat things that go beep, 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 you know, in the movies and stuff, right? You can see that this person's flatlining. You're getting a little bit of action, right? Because when we bend this elbow, boom, we've got a big spike. Boom, we've got a big spike. This is where they're compressing right here, right? And then it goes back out to where we're getting more broad lines. All right, so different fabrics can make more or less complex half-lock folds. Try to see them as simple forms, and as always, keep track of those cross contours. Because the fabric on this jacket is thicker, right, than the shirt above, the fold pattern won't be as sharp, making slightly more rounded folds, right? You can see the compression right there, right? And because this is probably a leather jacket, it's a little stiffer. The weight of it is a little heavier, right? This is probably a cotton shirt, so you're getting a lot more action because this is loose. But because this is more of a stiffer fabric, a heavier fabric, you're not going to get as much, but you're still going to get that compression because, well, if she couldn't compress it, well, then her arms would be just straight out, you know. It would be stiff, you know, it's like if she was starched kind of thing. So that's what we're talking about. These compressions right here, these half-locked compression, and that's where it gets its name from. All right. So here's some more examples of that half lock. You guys can see that the tension area where the knee bends right there causes these to compress. Same here. Bend of the elbow, you're compressing, and then you get this half lock fold. All right. And that's happening here as well. Right, it happens in different parts. She's wearing a skirt, but right in the stomach area, because she's bending over or she's hunched over, right? You're gonna get the tension from the back of the spine and the pelvis, and then the stomach will crunch and generate that half lock fold. All right. Now let's talk about the diaper fold. These are seen on scarves and handkerchiefs. These types of folds also happen when material is sagging between two support points. All right. So because of how you can have these two tension points, our compression, right, is going to be happening in this middle area. And you're getting kind of this, and what's happening is gravity is playing a role. What they don't show is gravity is actually playing its own role, pulling down the cloth itself, right? You can only pull it down so much because, well, it's got these things that it's nailed to. So it creates a rhythm of interlocking lines that are tighter in the center of compression and get looser as you move from the center. So you can see what they're saying is at this center right here, you can see how tight, right? It looks, everything's bunching up right here. And the further you get away from that center tension point, the looser you get. And they kind of do go into each other. So it's important to remember that folds, like everything else in our 3D world, are made up of forms, not just a series of lines. When drawing your folds or sculpting them, be aware of the up planes and down planes and how a cross contour would fall over the forms. So what they're saying is, like, you can see that clearly there's the top side and the darker side. There's the top side, then the darker side on the inside. There's the top side, darker side on the inside. So aside from antique diapers, you can see diaper folds on ancient Greek and Roman togas, on modern blouses, shirts, and in many more styles and eras. So when you're wearing these kind of loose fitting clothes, this loose fabric, you're gonna get that, right? And the tension, the compression point is coming right here where it bunches up and then it loops and it kind of drops down there. Drop fold. All right. The drop fold occur when fabric drops off a form to hang freely. All right. This is the one that is, usually gets simulated in different softwares and things like that. It's it's kind of easier to do it that way because the software will do a lot of the work for you. But when you're sculpting it, you want to know. So like if you think about it like tablecloth hanging from a table will have drop folds because it's just hanging freely there. All right. The look of these types of fold is determined by the form the material is hanging off and gravity. All right. So they are very similar to pipe folds in that they are created when fabric is compressed at a point of tension and allowed to hang down freely, I will add. The difference comes from the bottom edge, where the drop fold's base edge is not even like the pipe folds. So you can see that none of this, it just kind of falls. It kind of just drapes down, right? That's what it does. You can have a compression point right here, the point of tension, but we're letting it just kind of do its thing, let gravity do a lot of the work for us. The fold patterns created are like a series of flattened cones that link to each other, each one dropping lower. This creates a sequence of S-curve lines. So you can see that we kind of have this S-curve kind of going on in our fabric here. Look for drop folds where fabric is draped unevenly, all right? Like the corners of a tablecloth or the end of a scarf. Keep in mind the flattened cone form when envisioning your cross contours. All right, so those are the 6 types of fabrics. Now let's talk about their fabric types and their behaviors. All right, so we've got heavier fabrics. These are thick folds. They're slow moving. You would think denim, wool, burlap, those type of things. Light fabrics are delicate, flowing, silk, chiffon. These are very, very, very light, airy fabrics. Stretch fabrics, form-fitting, with very minimal fold. Think spandex, latex. Think like superhero costumes, right? Those are stretch fabrics where you have like very like in the armpits, maybe the elbow, like you have very minimal stretching or very minimal folds because of how the fabric is so tight around our character. We also have layered fabrics, multi-layer like coats, skirts, and different things like that, and they all react differently. Synthetic fabrics like polyester generally have crisper, hard-edged creases, especially in heavier weight fabrics like the stiff polyester jacket below. The polyester dress below has a much softer weave than the jacket on the left, and we can see that the folds are much softer because of this, right? You can see how sharp these are, whereas these kind of are soft, right? It's hard to get a sharp edge when it's not very stiff, all right? So below is a heavy cotton denim fabric, and we can see the folds are generally softer than the synthetic fabric. The fabric below is a thin cotton, where the folds tend to have a sharper edge than the thicker denim. It also has a higher number of small creases. Woven or knit fabrics will have very soft tube-like folds with few small creases. And when drawing fabric, pay close attention to edges in both contour and rendering. The difference between hard and soft edges is how we visually distinguish between the types of fabric, right? So if I see something hard, rigid, I'm not going to think, oh, that's cotton. Or I'm not going to think, oh, that's silk or chiffon. I'm going to think that's more like denim. That's, that's kind of a hard. If I see something skin tight that with minimal, I'm thinking that could be spandex, latex, right? These very form-fitting fabrics, maybe even leather. Certain types of leather can be very, very stiff, all right? So these are the kind of things that go through your mind when you're sculpting, when you're drawing, because it helps not only you, but it helps the viewer, the reader, be informed about what they're looking at. Okay, this is a denim shirt, or this is a cotton shirt, right? This is free flowing. This is a silk gown, right? Those type of things really do help us. All right. So now let's talk about insert folds. All right. Insert folds given to them because it's laying at rest, not under any specific tension or compression. It's just like, remember, I know most of y'all probably still do this. When you get home from school, work, whatever, you just throw your clothes on the floor, right? There's nothing acting on it other than gravity. While it's on, ain't nothing acting on it, right? I advise you to pick up your clothes and put it in the hamper, but since you're going to throw it there, I'm going to use it as, the exercise, all right? Pay attention to the edges. You'll see both soft, round creases and hard, crisp creases, all right? Because we kind of let gravity do its thing, it's going to do its thing, right? You can imagine insert folds to be like topography with peaks and valleys. Remember that everything in our three-dimensional world has thickness, right? So you can see that this has like a kind of a hard edge right here based on like the shadow, and then you'll get even some softer flowing Insert folds often have characteristics of the 6 common fold patterns. Here we see an indication of a diaper fold, right? So like I was saying, a lot of this stuff, they'll mix and match, but if you grasp all of them, you'll be able to use them in the right situation. You'll know, okay, I've got a sleeve compressing. Let me throw a half lock where his elbow compresses. Let me throw some zigzags where his sleeves are. All right. Insert folds can be visually complex, so rely on big planes to help organize the small detail. Breaking down each section into slightly more complex forms will give your fabric solidity instead of a mushy mess of detail. And make it clear how to light and render it, because what you'll get is where it folds under, you'll see that it's getting darker because, well, that's now in shadow and everything else will be in light. All right. So using the cloth brush and adjusting the strength dynamics, you need to use the dynamic cloth for realistic drapery. You can also hand sculpt it using the Move, the Standard, the DamStandard brushes, and you can polish it and refine it using the Smooth and the Pinch brushes. All right, so you guys, I want you guys to go and try to sculpt all of these specific types of folds that I just showed you today. I'm gonna give you this PowerPoint as well, so you'll go and you'll practice it yourself, and then post your findings, your lessons, or your practices on your chat. All right, so as you choose your fabric, choose the fabric type and the fold style, block out the shape with the Move brush, add primary folds with the DamStandard, and refine the detail with the Smooth and Pinch brush. Apply the final polish for realism. All right, so go through, attempt it, and we will see, and then I'll go over it tomorrow with the tutorial. All right. All right, so can anybody tell me what this one is? This guy right here. What kind of folds do we got going on here?
The insert.
That's the insert. What about this guy?
I do not know, but I had to do that for drawing one. So I am interested in doing this in ZBrush.
Cool.
Is that the diaper?
That is the diaper. Good stuff. All right, what do we got going on here? Remember, these are kind of like mouth openings. What's this? What we got going? Zigzag. Come on. All right, what's this one? Might be a little trickier. We got 2 tension points right here. Diaper. It's a mix of the diaper. We got a little diaper going here. What about this one? You get a little more complex. Anybody know this one?
You like the drop?
Drop. Good stuff. All right, this one is also drop again. All right. What I want you guys to do is be able to identify these, and when you guys see it, you guys can start to put it into your stuff. So that's going to be it for today's class. We will pick this up tomorrow. I'll see what you guys did, and yeah, we can go from there. Does anybody have any questions for me?